Shrimad's Divine Grace, by Charanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Granted Shrimadbhagavatam ki. Their most merciful Lordship Shri Shri Harakanja Vihari ki. Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Mahesabhadra ki. Shri Nataji Shri Balagopal ki. Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki. Nitai Go Prema. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye
Udire
Nastaprayeshu Bhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
For my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who the torchlight of knowledge has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart comes almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. We are today reading from this very Bhagavatam, from Canto 1, Chapter 10, Text 30.
Yes, 30.
Eta param stritvam apastape salam. Eta param stritvam apastape salam. Nirasta socham bata sadhu kurvate. Nirasta socham bata sadhu kurvate. Yasam grihat pushkara lochana patir. Yasam grihat pushkara lochana patir. Na jatu apaiti aritibir Riddhi Sprishan Na jatu apiti abritibir Riddhi Sprishan Eta param sritvam apaste pasalam. Nirasta socham batasaru kurvate. Et samgrihat pushkara lochana patir. Na jatu apaitya britibir riddhi sparshan. Eta param sritvam apastape shalam. Eta param stritvam apastape shalam. Nirasta socham batasaru kurvate. Nirasta socham batasaru kurvate. Yasam grihat pushkara lochana patir. Yasam grihat pushkara lochana patir. Na jatu apaitya britibir riddhi sprishan. Ya jata paitya britibir riddhi sprishan.
Eta param stritvam apastape salam.
Etam param stritvam apastape salam.
Nirasta saucham batasadu kurvate.
Nirasta socham batasaru kurvate.
Yasam grihat pushkara lochana pati.
Yasam grihat pushkara lochana patir.
Najatu apaiti ahriti bihi hridi sprishan.
Na jata paiti rittibir riddhi sprishan. Eta param sritvam apastape salam. nirasta saucham bhatta sadhu kurvate. Yasam grihat pushkara lochanapati. Najatai paityavitir disprasan etaparam svitvam apastape salam nirasta sojam bhattasaru gurvate yasam grihat pushkara locanapatir najatai paityavitir disprasan eta. All these women, param, highest, stritvam, womanhood, apastape shalom, without individuality, nirasta, without, saucham, purity, bhatta sadhu, auspiciously glorified, kurvate, do they make, yasam, from whose, grihat, homes, pushkar, lochana, the lotus eye, pati, husband, najatu, never at any time, apaiti, goes away, aritibi, by presentation, hriti, in the heart, sprishan, endeared. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. Please repeat. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality, and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. Purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The devotees of the Lord are purified souls. As soon as the devotees surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord sincerely, the Lord accepts them. Thus the devotees at once become free from all material contaminations. Such devotees are above the three modes of material nature. There is no bodily disqualification of a devotee, just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the filthy drain water when they are amalgamated. Women, merchants, and laborers are not very intelligent, and thus it is very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. They're more materialistic, and less than them are the Kirjatas, Hunas, Andhras, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abiras, Kankas, Yavanas, Kashas, etc. But all of them can be delivered. They are properly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. By engagement in the service of the Lord, the designated qualifications are removed. And as pure souls, they become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. The fallen girls under the clutches of Bomashore sincerely prayed to Lord Sri Krishna for their deliverance, and their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. The Lord therefore accepted them as his wives, and thus their lives became glorified. Such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as their most devoted husband. The Lord used to live with his 16,108 wives constantly. He expanded himself into 16,108 plenary portions, and each and every one of them was the Lord himself, without deviation from the original personality. The Shruti mantra affirms that the Lord can expand himself into many. As husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a costly endeavor. He brought the Parijata plant from heaven and implanted it at the palace of Satyabhama, one of his principal queens. If, therefore, anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshusam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Fully I'm not qualified to speak on becoming Krishna's wives, but I can speak in awe and reverence of how glorious it is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals to us how this marriage union between a man and a woman is what he has himself established. Now, their having been under the prison of, not sure who the demon was there, it's explained. Agashur? Bhavashur. Bhavashur. And so there is the term being used here that they were purified. Without individuality seems to suggest that they were being married all at once, same time. And then see, when a woman marries, just as the man marrying, they're no longer going to live from there on with their own desires alone. They're both giving of themselves to each other, and so thereon they take each other into thought, their thoughts, in what their activities are going to be. So in that regard, they lose their individuality. But see, this is likened to the soul surrendering to Krishna as well. It's the same relationship. And by the nature of the soul putting itself into that subservient nature to serve the Supreme Lord as the soul that we are does, we put ourselves automatically into a feminine relationship with Krishna, so to speak. Because we look to him as well as our protector, our giver of wealth, our giver of everything, our giver of knowledge. And so we have all of our faith and trust in the one in whom trust should be put in. And it is by this natural process or attraction to Krishna that we can see, irregardless of the past. And Krishna's making this clear here. Even their lower human beings and what are being described presently as being the most sinful in the American society, they are lower than that as well. They eat human beings. But they can, in this age now, by the taking of this process, become most elevated. And that's what this verse here is revealing. In normal society, the most degraded position in society is looked to be the prisons. Isn't that? If you're in prison, you're thinking of yourself as also being, of course, some of them might get there by still thinking themselves as the greatest. But normally in society, the most degraded of society are those who are now having been imprisoned by the laws of the land. But Krishna, seeing their innocence and that Bomashur had taken over and imprisoned them even though they were innocent. And this is evident as well of the fact that demons get hold of leadership positions and then use those positions to overpower others and fulfill their own lusty desires. Rather, in the United States, those positions have been established by the fathers, the forefathers, our forefathers. The founders of the governmental system we're using, they founded the representatives that are appointed by the general populace of people to be representative of the people. And in that regard, they also lose, or should lose, their individuality by now putting aside their own interests and beliefs and like that, by taking, going into the communities of the people they are representing to know what the people want from government. But in this day and age, just as this revealed here was taking place then, which was the cause for Krishna to come, so many unruly leaders. And so when such unruly leaders are in those positions of leadership and being putting devotees of the Supreme Person in places of suffering and they cry out, then the Supreme Person hears their prayers. And as we can see here, even as the degraded places they may have thought to have been in by Bomashur, quote unquote, modern day practitioners of quote unquote law, because what is being exhibited by rulers in present day society without themselves having been broken of their false egos and holding these positions of leadership for their own aggrandizement, for their own hopes of fame, for their own hopes of glory, for their own hopes of wealth. These are all manifestations of disqualification for the positions they're holding to be able to represent the general populace rather than their own desires for themselves. Jai Shrimadbhagavatam Jivita. Jai Gana, Jai Baladev, Mahesh Bhatta, Jai Shrimadbhagavatam. See, similarly here, Srila Prabhupada didn't write his own autobiography. And in this regard, we know that more people know the name Krishna than they know the person Abhay Charanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because he didn't come to spread his own glories. So similarly, Krishna we find being pleased with this position souls take when they submit themselves. They are then putting themselves in the position for him to be able to have the okay to work through them. Now, his potency of his love, the potency of his power, of his personality, the attractiveness of his personality can manifest through us as we surrender ourselves to the Supreme, irregardless of what we previously were. This verse is stressing the import of this. These women were in jail. Right now, you go down to the jailhouse where they imprison women, and you will find amongst most of them, they're not calling out to God. But amongst those that are, I can guarantee them, if they have a sincere heart, this verse is saying by qualification, the sincerity of their hearts was that they called Krishna to answer their requests. And this is the same sincerity Mother Kunti has when she's saying, Krishna, I see that in my own life, when I'm put into distress, then it pushes me towards you, pushes me to want your help, your aid, your protection, and to see you for who you are. And so in the same way, we can look ahead to our futures fearlessly. With that perspective, if you are waiting for distressful situations for you to be put into, then every situation you get put into, you will look at as an opportunity to draw closer to God, to draw closer in that development of that relationship, that friendship we're all supposed to be developing as human beings with the Supreme Person, to come to know what being a human being is supposed to be. And this is what is missing. See, when we turn the science of knowing God into individual, divided groups that all have their different perspectives that they believe makes them superior to all the different other groups, making up the same body, when they forget they are all making up the same body. Then, just as a husband and wife, then they divorce. Just as these churches have divided themselves against each other, they divorce themselves from God. That's what has happened with society. And they've created environments in which God himself doesn't want anything to do with. And the activities that have been done in his name many times have been done without being those acts that are pleasing to him. So if I can make that statement, then I have to know what kinds of activities are pleasing to God. Can't just leave the audience hanging and say, oh, your activities are all sinful. Your activities are all such that will condemn you to suffering in hell, without giving a way out. You know, when you look at those famous people who have spent their lives creating their wealth, engaging in activity that should normally actually produce happiness. We're talking about singers and entertainers that as they perform what they are taking to be their profession, it is being performed in a way to produce happiness for other people, and yet they find themselves at the end of life empty and without purpose, and many times wanting to take their own lives, end their life, end it. Which, if we analyze that being looked at as being a providing of happiness, singing and dancing. This is what God is giving us in a form for us to be able to do that and gain eternal benefit by doing it. How happy we should be to know this and to be able to have part in this very activity, singing and dancing. And singing what? Creating with the tongue a sound vibration that God himself has invested all of his spiritual potencies. That's this singing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We can know this every day, taking this in our hearts as this cry that these women had from this prison house, the most degraded place a human being can be finding themselves in, accused innocently of wrongdoing, and yet God has given us a song to sing to him when we find ourselves in those places of torment and grief and distress. We can know he will come to our rescue because he's giving this song to us to rescue us. It's by Krishna's energy that they had the ability to know, and that revelation he gave to them to know that he was the one to sing to call out to. So this is a reciprocal force that we can know. One step we take towards God, and hundreds of steps he takes towards us. Yeah. So we're not the doer. And though we see ourselves as such, it gives us a perverted reflection, putting us in a position which false ego makes us narcissistically to believe that we are the controllers of our own destiny. So, in effect, that puts us in that position to cause the destiny that we are experiencing now. But when we give that power over into the hands of the Supreme Person, the end result becomes different than we've been creating for these lives that we have been living millions and millions and millions of births as creatures, animals, bugs, birds. From desires we have to do the activities that these creatures engage in. Seeing these different forms, fearing different forms, having those different forms in our minds, and having the desire for the activity. That same desire turned towards the eternal will give us the fulfillment of the eternal. This seems like a very basic principle, but we have to remember that at every moment, the opportunity for us to be realizing the eternal is there. And so this is brought about, the awareness is brought about to the soul by its constant singing these names. And you might not be in a place where you can do that with your mouth, but your mind is constantly, if it is in a place of freedom to be able to do such, you will gain the communion that is constantly available with the eternal at every moment that you're engaging in the chanting, using your mind's power to chant, using your mind's power to conceive of the forces that are there of love that is drawing us to itself. Krishna is drawing us to himself. Just like the fame he had in these ladies' minds while they were in the prison house was the means of them to become free. So the ideas we have about Krishna in our minds, in our association with one another, in our conversations with one another, we will find to be that in the future, which has been that, which will allow us in the present now to be experiencing the happiness, the sweet pleasure of being in a human form that can commune with the source of all life, the source of beauty, the source of knowledge, the source of strength, the source of magnificence, source of glory, the source of light, the source of hope, the source of strength that gives us realization that is available at every moment to every soul that will seek. We are so fortunate to know this. That leaves us in a position of fearlessness. When you know that you have the all-powerful, most supreme, most perfect, all-knowing as your friend, what is there to be afraid of?
Nothing.
What is there to fear? What is there to be disgruntled about? Well, I know, having myself been forced by the modes of energy and driven to anger, lust, and greed as well in the world, I've been forced to that. And then having suffered the anger and the anguish of not being able to fulfill what I wanted, what I longed for, what I hoped for. And now, knowing the satisfaction that I'm experiencing from filling my mind with the pastimes of God, filling my mind with eternal knowledge and realization of who God is. Wow. This is an experience Christians only can hope for reading the Bible, spreading words about the pastimes that they have through the person they believe is the Son, which they believe to be the one and only Son of God, which is evident of their lack of knowledge. That everybody that is appearing in the form of human being is appearing in a form that God himself is the origin of. So as such, we are somewhat replicas as forms, reflections of the original form, but the mind is only able to use what it has access to. The mind is not able to gain access to which God does not give it access to, which is the problem atheists will find in an argument with a true believer of God. All the histories of men's past activities have nothing to do with the present truth of whether God exists or not. No matter what I do with my life has nothing to do with whether God exists or not. Same way it would not have anything to do with whether you exist or not. But atheists will argue that all the activities that so-called believers have engaged in hundreds and hundreds of years ago is proof and evidence that there is no God, because they engaged in these heinous acts. Now they might argue also that if they hadn't got this belief system from the book that they're reading, then they wouldn't have caused these wars. The thing is, Krishna gives us reason to believe by himself, his own engagement in a battlefield, that there is a cause on this planet for there to be war. But by the instructions we gain from the spiritual master to be applied according to time and circumstance now, through that being passed down by another incarnation of Krishna named Sri Chaitanya Prabhu Maha, the great Prabhu, who is the avatar, the Yuga avatar, who gives the Dharma of the age. So now when we come to his understanding, he reveals to us that in this age there is not a cause that human beings can indulge in, that is being engaged in for his purpose, and that his welfare, his warfare, that he is imparting all of his energy into now is the chanting of his holy names. So if you want to take up the real welfare and the real battle that's going on against evil, the real military strength against evil itself is the promoting and the taking part in the chanting of these holy names, because then God himself will be enabled to transfer his own consciousness with the participants of this chanting, so that they also can know the purpose of human life, that we are being given the opportunity as human beings in this form now that we have the opportunity of getting into, to go back to God's dwelling, to the eternal dwelling of God. And in order to get to that stage and to get to the ready place before we spend our last breath on this planet, in preparation for that, he wants us to engage in the same kind of activities that they do there. And that's what the chanting is fundamentally. Included in all the other activities there, which we can know by experience here, we can do simultaneously while every other activity that we're engaging in. So, somebody may ask you, you're peeling potatoes, what are you doing? I'm chanting. You're riding in a car, what are you doing? I'm chanting. You're, mowing the lawn, what are you doing? I'm chanting. Because the consciousness is the very valuable momentum force that will lead us into the next state of existence after it is the soul itself that creates this consciousness is forced into its next arena, into its next environment, into its next atmosphere, into its next dwelling, or as the person they call Christ called it, my Father's house has many mansions, or dwelling places. So where do you want to go? Then develop the consciousness that will get you there, to that place. If you want to go to heaven, then you have to engage in heavenly activities. If you want to get to the spiritual world, you have to engage in spiritual activities. And that's what we are promoting by the chanting of these holy, glorious names. It is equivalent to the activities that Krishna is allowing these queens to engage with him in marriage. What you can do with God in your mind through the chanting of these holy names is unlimited. So, as we go through our day, whatever we have to do, let's use our minds to remember the supreme source of love, the supreme source of energy, the supreme source of divine, pure, holy, all-powerful energy. And know that what we're engaging ourselves in, by the consciousness we have towards that supreme person from whom this divine energy is coming from, that attitude we are having towards this activity, he's giving us the privilege of engaging in. We can be thankful of, can be very thankful of the privilege. And by maintaining that attitude, it will develop itself into a sense of appreciation that will itself develop into a sense of love for Krishna that will become so overwhelming a force in our lives. We won't want anything else but somehow connecting to Krishna, somehow holding Krishna's hand. This is the goal of my life. I want to hold Krishna's hand. I want him to hold my hand. I want him to be happy with what I've done in this life. And if we make that our aim, because our experience has been, my experience has been everything I've ever asked him to be able to do. And he has confirmed it by saying he is ability. So this is what we can ask for. Please give me the ability, Krishna, to apply the energy I have in this life to do something that will make you happy. We develop that. Every day we develop that a little bit by little bit. And these 9 processes that Srila Prabhupada has established automatically puts us in a place by engaging in these activities to be able to develop that consciousness. Very difficult when you're working on the inside of a car and trying to fix an engine to think how that's related to serving God, right? Isn't that? But if you're here sewing a garland or cleaning a pot, it's going to have the very vegetables in it that's going to be actually glanced at by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's very easy then to see the connection of your labors and your work. You see what an advantage we have. All these activities to engage in Krishna's service that would otherwise we would be engaging in a mundane way for the pockets full of money that we could have for ourselves to eat ice cream and pizza and everything else with. All that comes automatically by developing this love for Krishna that is actually itself the true reward. Love. The greatest reward of life, to know love, that's the reward of life, and who the person of love is. That's my aim. If somebody can prove to me that something else is greater to aim for, I'm asking you to convince me. I'm asking you to persuade me. Maybe I can be moved in another way. But I've come to desire love. I've come to love love. You know, I don't know. I don't want anything else now. I'm happy with love. Are you happy with love? If you're not happy with love, maybe you should read some of our books that tells you how to find love. It's what it's all about. And it reveals the mystery of life is to know that life is meant to find love. And we see it in bits and pieces in one another. But Krishna is making available to us, he himself is the completeness of love. That's who we have to aim our hearts towards, so that one day we could marry God. You can marry God. Right now we're living in the same body with God. It's the same as being married, if you take it for the wholeness of what it is. Being one person with God. In that sense, we've lost our individuality, even though we see ourselves. But see, getting a name by initiation also removes our individuality, because that name automatically connects us to Krishna. So we're not realizing ourselves to be something different from Krishna. Krishna's energy, Krishna's service, Krishna's power, Krishna's potency, Krishna's relationships, all these names having to do in some way with Krishna. And by the realization of that, at the end of this life, just being constantly engaged in that we are being named as, automatically brings us to that place of completeness in the fullness of that realization. So you are who Krishna says you are. And Krishna says who you are through Guru. So even though we are thinking Guru is naming me, no, Krishna is naming you. And by that name then, you'll know your union with him. You'll know how he's wanting to know you as your eternal relationship with him. Any comments, any questions, any realizations, anybody like that? Yes,
thanks for the class.
AJ. Dot.
It's very good class, Prabhu.
Dot.
Yeah.
Krishna's mercy. Grantara Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Parampara ki jai, Panchatattva ki jai.